I asked all of you on Twitter to send me your kimono characters and fursuits and got over 100 replies. But not all of them were kimono fursuits. Or were they? Let's get into it. Hey y'all, it's your girl Stormi, and on my previous kimono video, I got a few questions like, what is kimono? Can a character or fursuit even be kimono outside of Japan? What differentiates a kimono fursuit from other fursuits? In any case, they're all so cute! Ah! But before we check out these beans, let's take a look at where they all started. We've all seen furries, fursuits, and furry conventions in places like America, Europe, and Australia. But what about places like Asia? Do furries even live in Asia? What about furry conventions or fursuits? And how does the furry fandom in the East differ as compared to, say, North America? We'll start by traveling to none other than Japan. You see, the phrase kimono translates to beastman, while its kanji literally translates to hair thing. Like a fuzzy little beastman. Believe it or not, kimono itself has existed in Asian cultures longer than the United States has existed as a country. Modern kimono culture isn't 100% reflective of its past, however. There are many borrowed elements from Western furry culture. That being said, however, the folklore of kimono itself has been around for centuries. Traditionally, in Japan, kimono is more similar to a yokai, like obake, bakemono, or kemonomimi. Obake and bakemono essentially means shapeshifter, with their literal translations meaning a thing that changes. A few others you may have heard of are kitsune, tanuki, kodama, and of course, kappa. They are creatures that would temporarily assume semi-human, plant, or animal forms. Hence why animals like the fox are considered sacred in Japan. Fast forward to today, and Eastern kimono culture has taken this ancient Japanese folklore and put their own modern twist on it. Basically, furries are called kemoners in East Asia. They are people who own an anthropomorphic character or have one as a family member. I know it sounds confusing, but just bear with me. Insert Stormi as a bear with fart sounds. In American furry circles, we usually have what are called personas, an idealized version of the person creating the character. Individualism and the entitlement to express oneself are very important in America, so it's only natural that American furry characters are, more often than not, an expression of oneself. But in most cases, this isn't true at all in Japan. Among Japanese kemoners, their kimono characters are not seen as a self-representation or a persona, but rather welcoming a new child or family member into their own family. Wait, what? Speaking of family members, I'd love to welcome you into my family of supporters on my Patreon or Ko-fi page. These platforms are how I afford food, rent, and bills. Making YouTube videos is my full-time job, and not having a second job means I can make more videos for you more quickly. So for just $1, you too can support my channel and my videos. And for $5 or more, you can join my Discord server. Links on the screen and in the description below. Okay, back to the video. I'll use myself as an example. Since I'm a good old American, I might say Stormi is my persona. But in Japanese culture, someone else might say Stormi is my child. In most cases, Japanese furries refer to their creations as furry characters, aka kemono, and they refer to themselves as kemoners. The owner and the character are considered two completely separate entities, and as such, should be addressed separately. So, let's take a little quiz. Rev up those fryers because it's time to play Address That Person! For our first and only round, we have two glorious subjects. Straight from Japan, give it up for Zuno-san and Minokuru-san. This person is named Zuno-san, and their kimono character is named Minokuru-san. The human Zuno is currently standing in front of you. So for 1 potato, how do you correctly address this person? That's right, you would call them Zuno, because Minokuru, the kimono character, isn't here. Now for 2 potatoes, if Zuno were to put on their fursuit of Minokuru and then come back, how should you address them now? You know that Zuno is inside the suit, so which one's the right one? That's correct. This time, you would call them Minokuru, because Zuno isn't here. Minokuru is. Even though you definitely know that Zuno is inside the fursuit, there is currently a different person standing in front of you, and that person is Minokuru. Thanks for playing. See you next time on Address That Person. Anyway, let's review a bit. Remember, Minokuru is Zuno's character's or family member's name. While I have a persona of myself named Stormi, Zuno has a member of their family named Minokuru. There are exceptions to this rule, but that's the general idea. It all boils down to cultural differences. There is some overlap between personas and kimono characters, but their foundations are completely different. Maybe someday I'll talk about how personas first became a thing. This distinction is so very important to keep in mind, so if you ever get to meet a kimono, make sure to address them correctly. There's also a few other kimono-related terms in Japan. You've probably already heard of the word Kemonomimi, and it probably makes you think of these cat ear headband thingies. In Japan, Kemonomimi actually refers to humanoid characters with animal-like features. Kemonomimi is not to be confused with kimono, however. Kimono characters are full-on, quote-unquote, beast people. And here's another phrase you may have heard before. In Japan, fursuits are called Kigurumi. Wait, what? So in Japan, fursuits are Kigurumi, but in America, a Kigurumi is like a loose onesie. And confusing me even more is the fact I'm wearing a fursuit head, but I'm wearing a Kigurumi. And I'm like, is the whole thing a Kigurumi? Is it a fursuit Kigurumi? My brain hurts. There's even a site where you can buy Kigurumi, but they're not Kigurumi. Or are they Kigurumi? The kanji for Kigurumi roughly translates to clothing that wraps you up, with ki meaning wear and gurumi meaning wrap or cover. I mean, fursuits do cover us up, so it's not technically wrong. So what about furry conventions? It turns out there are plenty of fur cons across East Asia. One of the most popular furry meetups in East Asia is the Japan Meeting of Furries. JMOF started in 2012 and is currently the largest furry convention in Japan, with 1,420 attendees in 2023. It's also important to note that kemono furry culture isn't exclusively limited to Japan. In fact, most of the people who replied to my tweet with photos of their kemono fursuit were actually from China or Taiwan. Speaking of kimono suits, this really surprised me when I learned about it. Just because a suit looks kimono doesn't necessarily mean it is actually a kemono fursuit. Let me explain, because I had trouble understanding this too. Basically, you could show a kimono fursuit to 2 veteran kimonos and get 2 completely different answers as to whether or not it's actually a kimono suit. There aren't really any strict governing guidelines as to what dictates a suit being kimono. Some say you need large eyes and a small snout, while others say it depends on other features like the hairstyle, or whether or not the suit looks quote-unquote authentic. It all depends on who you ask and their own personal interpretation. Most would agree, however, that your typical Western-style toonie fursuit isn't kimono, but if you've got a huge set of sparkling glass eyes and a small booper, maybe it is. Some kimono suit makers in East Asia don't even follow the conventional guidelines of kimono. The point I'm trying to make is, don't overthink it. And just because someone says a kimono suit isn't kimono, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily right or wrong. That's just like their opinion, man. To me, it's more of a general set of guidelines. Anyway, let's take a look at some kimono suits. They're a blue Folf, so not only do they have exquisite taste in character design, but they're also one long boy. Just look at those legs, I mean, gosh. The shape, height, and overall demeanor of Taigen meant I had to get pics with them right away at TFF. I can confirm they are a super hecking tall boy. This puppy partial proudly displays its love and affection for the world to see. Even though they have a simple design, this suit manages to be very expressive and welcoming. The lack of cheek floof on a canine suit also adds a dynamic I don't see on a lot of Kemono Fursuits. Sometimes, less is more. A bunny kimono suit? Okay, I'm clearly in heaven at this point. The brown and white color palette reminds me of s'mores, while the yellow makes me think of fire? Hey Borean, do you like s'mores? Maybe it's that jacket, that sassy demeanor, or the bumblebee theme, but I can't help this being drives a tricked out modded Honda Civic. You thought it too. Don't tell me you didn't. Seriously, I can't help but think they just drive a modded, like, really fast dragster or something, you know? It just seems like, you know, they drive a really fast car. At first, I thought this was an Arctic fox, but actually, it's a feline. The way they just wobble about and wave their paws makes me think they like to live life in the slow lane. Taking in the vibes, one at a time. And what could be better than that? I wish I were a cat sometimes. Wow. This is probably one of the most insane kimono suits I have ever seen. The stylish red markings remind me of Kitsune, and the bladed horns put this suit in the intimidorable category. Intimidating and adorable. I rate this suit butt wings out of 10. Someday I might do another Kemono Fursuits video, but maybe in the future. Anyway, that about wraps up Kemono Furries. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to tap a like, leave a comment. Let me know if you have a favorite Kemono character or perhaps a kimono suit of your own. Subscribble, bing the taco bell, and be sure to check out my Patreon for perks like my Discord server, early access to videos, and more.